Kim, what's on your radar?
Well, while we here at Rising were on our Christmas break, Kamala sat down with Charlamagne Tha God, a popular radio and television host, on his Comedy Central show, The God's Honest Truth. And this clip from the interview went viral.
So who's the real president of this country? Is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne.
Come
on. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden, and I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris.
Cringe, yikes. If you're like me, that clip was just another addition in a long list of reasons why Kamala Harris is not your favorite politician. I mean, listen, if you have to snarkily tell people Biden is the president, that you're the vice president, and what your name is, maybe Charlamagne's question wasn't so off the mark after all. And what's worse is Symone Sanders, Kamala's senior advisor, actually tried to run interference and protect Kamala from having to answer the question before she could answer for herself.
Who's the superhero that's going to speak against Joe Manchin? No. I want to know who's the real president of this country. Is it Joe Biden or Joe Manchin?
I'm sorry. I interrupted. I don't think the vice president can hear you. It's Symone. I'm so sorry, Charlamagne. We have to wrap.
She can hear me.
You can hear me? Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me, Madam Vice President?
So I'm sorry. We got to wrap.
Oh.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
They're acting like they can't hear me.
What is that? This is such a problem in and of itself. Why are people like Symone and those surrounding Biden protecting them from answering questions from citizens of this country? They are elected leaders. They work for us. They shouldn't be considered so elite they're shielded from answering to us. Yet it happens all the time with Biden and now Kamala as well. This makes me angry. But nonetheless, Kamala answered. We got the snark, and many people said, see, this is why Symone didn't want her to answer. They didn't want a clip like this to go viral and make Kamala look worse than she already does. But here's where it gets interesting. There were a lot of Democrats who actually liked that exchange. When The Hill ran this headline, people scoffed at it and accused the organization of running interference for Harris. I can assure you, The Hill has no interest in running interference for her or anyone. We diss Kamala all the time, but as hard to believe as it is, yes, that exchange actually scored Kamala a few points. So much so, we might end up seeing more of this snarky Kamala to come, and it might be the path Democrats take, thinking it could rescue Kamala from her sinking ship of terrible ratings. To understand why, we have to go back to whatever made Kamala even somewhat popular to begin with. What put Kamala Harris on the presidential primary map was her questioning of Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation hearings. Remember this?
Are you saying that with all that you remember, you have an impeccable memory? You've been speaking for almost 8 hours, I think more, with this committee about all sorts of things you remember. Yeah. How can you not remember whether or not you had a conversation about Robert Mueller or his investigation with anyone at that law firm? This investigation has only been going on for so long, sir. So
right,
please
I'm not sure.
I'm
just trying to think. Do I know anyone who works at that firm? I might know.
Have you had? That's not my question. My question is, have you had a conversation with anyone at that firm about that investigation? It's a really specific question.
I would like to know the person you're thinking of, because what if there's...
I think you're thinking of someone and you don't want to tell us.
People loved Prosecutor Kamala's blistering questions of Kavanaugh, and it was the standout moment that threw her into the spotlight. It was after this exchange when rumblings began about Harris possibly running for president. And once Kamala did decide to throw her hat into the ring, we can't forget what launched her ahead of the other candidates for a short period of time during the primaries.
So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. Mm-hmm. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
There was Kamala once again going after powerful men, and people were gobbling it up like a Thanksgiving turkey. After Kamala's supposed takedown of Biden, her ratings went from 8% to 17%, launching her to the front of the Democratic primary pack. She fundraised $2 million in the 24 hours following the debate and was declared by many in the media as the unofficial winner of the evening. Her popularity was short-lived because Kamala's strength only comes out in these rare moments. The rest of the time, she spends blubbering around, backtracking, and flip-flopping on issues. And when asked tough questions herself, she giggles. Plus, we can't forget Kamala was then herself a victim of her own tactics when Tulsi Gabbard slashed her during a later debate, effectively ending her primary run. Now, people want strong Kamala. They don't want weak Kamala. The giggling, flip-flopping, and the ability for others to poke holes in her own sordid past is a problem that's likely not going away. But there's no doubt people love seeing Kamala Harris get snarky and go after others. It's been the thing time and time again that has helped her move from being mediocre and forgettable to being perceived as strong and exhibiting some sort of leadership qualities.
I just want you to know that Madam Vice President, that Kamala Harris, that's the one I like. That's the one that was putting the pressure on people in Senate hearings. That's the one I'd like to see more often out here in these streets.
So obviously, there is way more to being a leader than prosecuting others, and I'd even argue that the trait is detrimental to our nation, not beneficial in a position of leadership when you need to be the leader of everyone, not just some. It's more valuable, in my opinion, to have someone who is strong in their convictions and less divisive than it is to have someone extremely divisive and flip-flop on everything. But nonetheless, if the Democratic strategists are looking to resuscitate Kamala Harris's vice presidency and keep her as Biden's running mate in 2024, this exchange between her and Charlamagne Tha God was probably a reminder of what made her popular in the first place. And it's likely they'll try to run less interference in the future and instead will encourage this sort of snarky behavior going forward. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you if you think this snarky Kamala, if they're going to go forward with this, and if you think it would actually work.
No, I mean, I think that people who are into that snarky Kamala are already in the percentage of people who are approving of her so far, which is in the 20s or 30s, depending on the poll. So, which actually that's tens of millions of people. That's who that appeals to, and I don't think you break out with that. I think the bigger problem that you saw in that clip is Kamala Harris's inability to be a good manager, and that's the thing that has eviscerated every attempt of hers to move to a higher level. And then when she collapses, the recriminations from her current and former staff then spill out into the New York Times or Politico or the Washington Post. And what you saw there was a staffer who was worried that if she allowed that question to go forward, might get in trouble afterwards. And so, did the most aggressive thing because that's the safer thing from a staffer perspective, because you did something. So she can't then later say, why didn't somebody do something? Well, I did something. Turned out that something was bad, and it made her look ridiculous. It made her look overcoached, and it's that combination of being overcoached and being a poor manager, which I think is going to be the thing that fundamentally holds her back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think with Trump, it worked, right? Him being really snarky, going after others. People loved that about him. And I think they also like that about Ron DeSantis. And I do think they really love that about Kamala Harris. I think what people are disappointed in is they're not seeing more of that. They were hoping to get that kind of prosecutor bulldog. But Robbie, what do you think?
Yeah, the cringy part of that, the Charlamagne interview, the handler trying to be like, oh, no, this is over, we can't, that's hard to watch and kind of speaks to her ability to, just continue engaging this person. I think she has I think Harris is sunk not really by how snarky she is, if that's what you want to call it, but she's just sunk by, a lack of principles or lack of a discernible ideological views, or like where do you position her on the spectrum? What are her ideas? She's just mutated them too many times and didn't really seem, like she was very committed to is that the prosecutor? Is it this kind of social justice? Is she a moderate? Is she part of the progressive left? Is she a class person? Is she a race issue person? She's never picked a lane, and she's never seemed very committed to one way or the other. So I think that's what holds her back the most.
Trump and DeSantis are committed to the bit. She's never fully committed to the bit.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's Kamala's biggest downfall is the flip-flopping and the giggling when she's asked a tough question. I mean, people want a leader that actually is going to have some kind of conviction, and we don't really know what Kamala Harris stands for. Seems like she stands, it's like one minute
she stands for nothing.
Well, and that's the problem, right? 1 minute she says something, and then she backtracks and changes her mind mere hours later when talking to the press. And this happened over and over and over during her presidency campaign. And so,
when she went after Biden
think,
in the clip you played, right? Later, she was like, "Oh, come on, that was just politics or whatever."
And now she's vice president.
That was like a really. But that was a very cruel and biting thing you accused him of, and then just to be like, I didn't really mean it. That was not a good look.
It was just a place where we're supposed to air our views about public affairs. So I was just lying.
Yeah. I definitely don't think there's anything that can fully resuscitate her. I don't think she's ever going to be really well liked. I don't think the public's ever going to take to her. But I am curious to see what they try to do to try to get her at least somewhat boosted a little bit in the ratings.
She should attack the far left. I mean, that was I keep stealing this line because it was a great line. Matt Iglesias, I think, in his Substack said this. Why doesn't she make fun of the San Francisco school board for renaming schools? Do that kind of stuff that Obama himself did some of, right? You crazy college kids who don't believe in free speech, you're wrong. She could do that. It would make her instantly more popular. But alas, she's not getting that advice.
I don't know.
Well, thank you. We'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.